All right, everybody. I want to welcome you back from spring break and say thank you for attending our return of the Webster DADAH lecture series. Today, we have a wonderful design speaker who I am not going to introduce, and it is because as you guys know from our previous speaker, Javen, we are actually inviting some of our Webster Design alums to introduce and invite speakers for the lecture series this semester. And so today I want to welcome not only our speaker, but also the person who suggested that they come talk to us today, Daniel Frumhoff. He was a Webster graduate in 2015 and is a design director, design educator, and motion designer at Daniel Frumhoff Design. Daniel, you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Emily. Great to see everyone popping in and all the names. Yeah, I happy to be here. I nominated Holly for this speaker series for today, and want to speak a little bit to that, and then I can totally introduce her before she jumps right in. So initially, we were talking with Noriko a little bit about who might come in and speak, and I thought Holly would be great. She's a longtime friend and mentor, and someone that I worked closely with at Claris right after I graduated from college. And yeah, some questions that, even as a design student at Webster, I was always wondering was how do you measure successful graphic design in the real world? How are these kind of global campaigns for huge brands launched and concepted, and how do they have real impact? And how do brands use design to tell authentic stories? As well as how do brands take an active role in, designing for good, social responsibility, and empathy? We had Design for Good as a class at Webster, and so I thought it would be really appropriate for Holly to come in and kind of speak about all the whole other side of the industry, the business, and yeah, shed some light on that. I definitely encourage everyone along the way to add questions in the comments, and Holly can speak to that too. And without further ado, I'll introduce Holly. Holly is the Vice President of Global Marketing at Claris and has over 20 years of experience with global marketing and media communications. She's worked across many sectors, including CPG, service, travel, e-commerce, fashion, luxury, and entertainment. At Claris, she leads marketing efforts for the brand portfolio, including brands like Naturalizer, Alan Edmonds, Dr. Scholl's, Franco Sardo, and many more. Just to name a few from her past of amazing brands that she's worked with. It includes Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Budweiser, Bud Light, National Car Rental, Alamo Car Rental, and Sony PlayStation. And so without further ado, one more thing. I want to give a shout out to Sina, who designed the social graphics to promote this event, and Ashley V for help on presentation design. And yeah, I'll hand it over to Holly to take it away.
All right. Thank you, Daniel, for the kind introduction. And thanks everybody who's dialed in on Zoom. I'm based here in St. Louis, so I wish circumstances were different and we could have done this live. That would have been fun. But we'll just go virtual like we've been doing for the better part of a year. And I did want to throw out that, questions are welcome. Love for you either to vocalize them or put them in the chat to make it a more, interesting conversation and make sure you're getting out of it what you seek to learn. And then we will randomly, I'll work with Emily to select a couple of folks who participate by asking questions, and we'll give you some free shoes. So it'll be super fun. So think of those questions and get them in the chat. All right, let me just make sure this all works. Here we go. All right, so that's who I am. I just thought it would be fun quickly to talk about my career journey. I think, I always found that super interesting to understand when I was in college and looking out what I might want to do, how people ended up where they end up, what are the different paths they take. So I went to journalism school at the University of Missouri. And when I graduated from there, I joined Fleischman Hillard as a PR intern and then, continued continued on. While I was there, I worked, that's when I worked on Sony PlayStation. So I spent many hours playing video games, but I also worked on Busch Entertainment, so SeaWorld and Busch Gardens. And over the course of a few years, Anheuser-Busch, who owned those at the time, decided to bring PR in-house. And so I moved in-house to AB. And I spent about a decade there. And while I started in a more communications role, it evolved over time into more of a marketing position, just sort of following things I was passionate about, curious about, or was doing well at. And then from there, I joined Enterprise. And when I joined Enterprise, it was just Enterprise Rent-A-Car. But while there, we acquired Alamo and National and became Enterprise Holdings. And I ran the media, sponsorship, and creative departments. And I think the great thing about that was really all of those past experiences sort of coming together. And I spent about 7 or 8 years at Enterprise. And then I guess I'm making a tour of all the big St. Louis brands, ended up at Caleres, have a huge love of fashion, love footwear. So while beer and cars were fun, I'm really doing something I'm much more passionate about here. So that's sort of the journey. And I think the thread that keeps all of this together, I love to tell stories. That's how I got into journalism. And I have really been able to bring that to life across all of my jobs and all of my positions. And then I've also really been passionate about understanding people and consumers. And so, really understanding the consumer and figuring out what they need, as before they need it, and then being able to market to it is key for, the roles I've been in. So that's kind of the foundation of where it all probably began and started and has continued through. So Caleres, for those of you who don't know, was the former Brown Shoe. We're located right here in downtown Clayton. And about 8 years ago, the company itself went through a rebranding. So we wanted to change our name from Brown Shoe into something else. The word Caleres comes from the Latin word calere, meaning to glow with passion or intensity. And we really thought that was the right decision. Our 140-year legacy of craftsmanship certainly provided a great foundation, but we really needed to focus on the next chapters, which are being written through technology, of course, the fabulous people that work here, research, manufacturing, sustainability, sourcing, and we felt like Brown Shoe was sort of more holding us with sort of an eye to our history. And also Caleres is, branching off. It isn't just about shoe, it's about fashion. There's apparel, there's accessories. So it made sense to kind of have a more holistic, broader name. So Daniel hit on this, but this is our family of brands. And across the board, our collective purpose with all of these brands is really to inspire people to feel great feet first. We are truly experts in foot care and foot making and shoemaking, shoe craftsmanship. And so, that's the common thread between all of these brands. And we've got different offerings. And of course, they're all aimed squarely at different consumers as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. All right. What makes us Caleres? I talked about our passion and our purpose. We plant on our values of passion, accountability, curiosity, creativity, and caring. That's what we really look at when we're thinking about hiring and if people will be a good cultural fit and help us sort of bring the brands to the next level. Our advantage, in addition to having 140 years of experience in making great footwear, we really have brands that span diverse consumer segments. And then we're powered by industry-leading product creation, global sourcing, and fulfillment. And fulfillment became a huge deal this year with the pandemic as stores closed and everything was being shipped, to consumers individually. So not all brands were able to rise to that occasion like Caleres was with sort of these state-of-the-art fulfillment centers. But above all, in everything that we're doing, consumer insights and feedback really drives all of our decisions, our design process, our marketing strategies, and really every single choice we make. It all comes back to who is the consumer and really understanding them and being empathetic to who they are and how they're living their lives. And that's not new for us. We've really been driven by consumer insights from the very beginning. And I'm not going to hit on all these, but two I find super interesting. In the 1860s, a insight bubbled up that our left and right feet are in fact different. And so shoes started being designed for a left and right foot. Before that, the shoes were just made on a single last. So we've all put a shoe on the wrong foot. That doesn't feel great. So it's just interesting that that really didn't come to be a thing until the 1860s. And then shortly after that, with our Naturalizer brand, this idea that a woman's foot is shaped really differently than a man's foot. And they started creating lasts designed to fit a woman and her needs. And so that, and our Naturalizer brand, we fondly, its tagline is the brand with the beautiful fit. And it really all dates back to that one insight that like a woman's foot's different. So it's not just about shrinking what we're making for men. It's a different mold and a different last. All right. So with that said, the other big thing at play is, consumers' expectations and behaviors have changed dramatically. And we all know that, we've all lived it, and it was even accelerated, tenfold in this past year with the pandemic. But we have so much choice. We expect to get things like immediately and easily. You hit order on Amazon and you are like, why isn't this already in my hand? Like I hit order. Like we just expect things so seamlessly and quick. Mobile technology and social media have exploded. There's a blurring for us, which is really important. This idea, the blurring of athletic and fashion. Our dress brands really suffered this past year, and our casual brands, skyrocketed. So, that was interesting. Sustainability and social responsibility. We know our Gen Z consumer and millennial, but even more so, Gen N, this is so important to them. They want to engage with brands that are passionate and care about the things they're passionate and care about. So we all need to be doing better. At Caleres, we've made great headway here. It's about progress, not perfection. We certainly aren't perfect, and there's plenty more to be doing in fashion in general. Gets a lot of bad marks on this. So, that's work to be done, and we continue to fight that fight. And then at the end of the day, brands matter. This idea that while you have a proliferation of choice, consumers are opting into brands they know and trust and can count on. And, they might count on them for comfort in terms of footwear, or they might count on them because they know with every original collection shoe they buy, that company is planting a tree. So there are many reasons to care, and we need to figure out what are those reasons that are going to resonate the most with our target audience and really bring those to life. At the end of the day, Jack Taylor at Enterprise used to always say our brands are the most valuable thing we own. I totally agree. And we do business every day as if our success depends upon our company's good name, because it does. So our reputation and powerful brands, that we're building together here are our most precious assets. All right, so why do we even market to consumers? And I think, before we jump right into sharing some of the great work that we've done, and we can talk about beautiful imagery and photography, and we can talk about style and design, and we can talk about the right message, and always, of course, with the consumer at the center of this. As you all embark into real, to careers once you graduate, you'll find that you have to fight for budget dollars. And so I literally make a case every day, that talks about the importance of marketing to consumers. If we build it, they don't just automatically come, right? So why do we market to consumers? Well, the United States has the largest footwear market in the world. So there's one reason why. In the US alone, I gotta hide my little, I'm sorry. In the US alone, there are 328 million adults who are 18 plus of shoe buying age. Consumers in the United States spent $79 billion buying 2.5 billion pairs of shoes in 2019. So that's approximately 7.4 pairs of shoes a year per person. And it translates into about $277. And guess what? They're choosing the footwear and the brands that they want to buy from, and we want them to choose ours. So we've got a market. There are more than 500 footwear brands. So here's just a couple of logos I threw up on screen, but there's big, been around forever, huge budgets, High Nike, New Balance, things like that. There's small, there's emerging, where did Rothy's and Allbirds come from? They kind of came from nowhere. Over $517 million is spent annually by footwear manufacturers on advertising that's targeting, the American consumer, and not all budgets are created equal. So that's why it's so important to really understand that consumer, understand what matters to them, and be able to market in a meaningful way. Okay, everybody tracking? You've probably heard that marketing really boils down to like the right message at the right time to the right person. And, there's a lot of truth in that. And I think the other thing is when you talk about message, there's really two key marketing communication strategies that you'll work on in your life. One is about brand development. And this is where this is what makes my heart beat. This is what I love to do. This is the work I'm most passionate about. And this is what builds powerful brands. And I've had the opportunity to work on some, very powerful global brands. But brand development is for long-term business needs, where consideration is motivated by brand reputation. So that's investing in those sustainable efforts. That's investing in stories that matter. Then there's brand promotion. And 2020 was almost the death of me because the whole year was spent in this bucket. And it was really for short-term business needs where consideration is motivated by incentives. So, I might not have been thinking about you, but you're 50% off. I'm going to go check this out. Famous Footwear, which is one of our great brands. You have buy one, get one almost on all year last year. And that was just the reality of where the consumer was. And that we had lots of inventory to get rid of and all the stores were shuttered. So it was an online play. But anyway, today I'm going to spend most of my time talking about brand development because I think that's really where the power is and where the partnership between great creative, great marketing insights and then execution all come together. So when I think about the job to be done, and when you're, addressing any different kind of marketing scenario, we really think about the customer's life cycle and this idea that it's never ending. So, you might have also seen this as a funnel. And I think, in my early days in marketing, it was all about a funnel. The problem with the funnel is it kind of says like there's an end destination. And once you've got a loyal consumer, you've got them for life. And in today's world, that isn't true. It's sort of this continual cycle. So discover, that's reach, that's awareness, that's telling big brand stories, that's getting great PR placements. Explore, that's about acquisition. How do I get people how do I get my brands into the consideration set of a consumer? Consumers will say they think about 3 to 5 brands, shoe brands when they think about a shoe need. So how do you make sure you're always in, that top 3? Buy, that's really about conversion. Like how do we bring them in and actually convert them, whether that's in a store or in these days, mostly online. And so, you have email, you have direct mail, home, those sort of tactics help drive that. Branded search, bidding on keywords that folks are searching on and moving them through. You keep kind of moving through. So now you've bought them, they've converted. That's great. How do I keep engaging with them? How do I retain them? I certainly don't want to be a one and done. And when you're operating in that promotional bucket, you often are. You're bringing in somebody that was just attracted by a price point. Doesn't mean that they now are an advocate of the brand. But if you have them and you've learned something about them, you've collected their email, they followed you on social, you have the opportunity to engage and try to, retain. A lot of what we do in this front are retargeting ads, which I know you all, are probably victims of every day. You go and visit a website and then that little shoe or dress or whatever is going to follow you around, everywhere else you are. So you're reading an article on USA Today and it's over here reminding that you checked it out. So we do a lot of that. That's sort of a real world example. And then ultimately is that advocacy or loyalty. Like you want the consumer to know the brand, care about the brand, and love the brand so much that they talk it up to their friends. And we have loyalty programs for that. That's a great way to nurture it. We also think our organic social following is a big part of that. We did a lot more Insta lives and events where consumers could like really engage with the brand in the past year out of necessity and going forward, because it's proven to really work and helps us nurture that relationship with that consumer that really loves you. Okay, so a couple other just like fun facts that we probably all know, but I think it's useful, useful to plant on. Good marketing really meets the consumer where they are. And for most of 2020, we were all at home, or more precisely, in front of our screens or our devices. So that's really where we spent, from a brand, a media perspective, all of our time this past year as well. And due to that, we weren't the only ones. Like 2020 was definitely a year of budget cuts for corporate America and big brands, but it was not a cut across digital media. We actually saw that amped up as more brands and companies thought that was like a place that would work and drive some commerce for them. So media actually went up. But global media consumption, the cost of media, global media consumption has hit an all-time high. Twitter saw, their average daily users jump 23% this past year. There was an increase in Pinterest of 60%, which makes great sense because people were going there to get inspired. So many people were doing things to improve their living space, whether they needed to make a home office or a school for children or whatever else. So Pinterest, great increases, and we're big advertisers on Pinterest. So, that's just something that, like, it was great. There was more traffic. It was bad. The pricing was going up and up and up. There was a 10 to 20% increase in broadcast shows, and cable news ratings doubled last year. Makes sense. We were all tuning in to try to understand this pandemic and what was happening next, and if anyone had any good news to share. More social media connections with heightened engagement. That also makes great sense. You were unable to see anyone in real life. So, even people were like joining Facebook that maybe never would have as a way to see friends and family. Streaming, which has been on fire, continued expansion, and that was heightened by a lot of them thinking about the consumer, thinking about building loyalty and offering up free subscriptions for, the year or 6 months, as a way to get through this pandemic, but then also getting a whole lot of people subscribed and in the mix. Consumers are exposed to about 10,000 brand messages a day. And at any given time, 84% of us are shopping for something. And 97% of us go online to find that product or read a review or do some price checking. So really in 2020 and even before, but there's virtually no barriers to entry. So these major digital acquisition channels, have made it so easy for even novice marketers to get in there, including if, like sometimes you get random ads from brands and you get, you think that picture looks great and you're sure that swimsuit's going to look fabulous on you. And then when you get it, it's from an unknown brand. It took 21 days to get there. It's actually coming from, somewhere abroad, and it's like horrible. It doesn't fit. You can't return it. So that goes back to that brands matter kind of thing. But it was really easy for novice marketers to quickly and easily spin up creative and push out ads. And so as they saw success on Google and Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and Pinterest, more brands just kept going into the space. And so that gets to that idea of 10,000 brand exposures a day. And what's the danger in that? Well, consumers become totally desensitized. It's like there's so much coming at us and there's so many brands and so many options. Like I don't notice. I just don't even care. So that's where the magic of the marketing, the creative, the message, really has to serve as a disruptor and give people a reason to care about the brand and take a moment to engage. And, I've hit on this a lot, but, we've said the pandemic really, we saw a 5-year acceleration in consumers' online shopping habits in the past year. So while we all knew we were going, we got there a whole lot faster due to COVID. And 42% of total footwear market sales are expected to be through e-commerce in 2021. And that's huge. When I joined Caleres 7 years ago, 10%. So like it's just skyrocketing. And that's not just our owned websites, although that's a big part of it. It's also the business that we do on Amazon. It's the business we do with Nordstrom.com, Macy's.com. So all of us are seeing this across the board. And for our business in particular, you look at that 32.3 was our e-commerce penetration, and 2021 it's 47. And the difference in the number I just said was I was talking about only our own e-commerce, which was really small when I got here, but it's become bigger and bigger. So how do we fight all of this? How do we fight the noise? How do we fight the getting consumers being desincentivized? So here we talk a lot about brand power, and does this brand have power or not? And if it doesn't, what do we need to be doing to try to strengthen that? So our objective is to move consumers to a different state of emotional connection while capturing outsized market share, and obviously impressive profit margins, so we're not always having to play that on sale game. And how do we achieve this? We think first and foremost we have to identify and understand our consumer target, and we have to really, really understand the consumer. And then our brands have to have a clear purpose and intent. Like, we cannot have all the brands trying to be all the things to all the people, and we need to fight that urge and say this brand is meant to do this against this target audience. And then we really need authentic and meaningful storytelling. From a product perspective, we need big halo products, sort of hero items. And then in some instances we do these like halo segments, and we can talk a little bit about that, like a more aspirational version of the brand that might help us capture a different consumer or move into a different retailer. So activating brand power, for us, it's really about image and identity. And this is where Daniel and I have done some great work together in his time at Caleres. But there's that differentiation by brand based on consumer, reason for being, and then consistent imagery and tone based on the emotional core. So that is where the marketing and creative teams really spend their time at Caleres and their focus. So now I was just going to share sort of a couple like light case studies that bring some of this to life, and I can move through these quickly, but all the things I just touched on, I'm hoping you kind of see it all come together here, so it's less esoteric and more like real world and how it all happens. But before I do that, I don't know, Emily, were there any questions that would like relate more to the first part of the deck that would make sense for us to talk about now?
Yeah, we got a few questions just based upon some snippets of things that you said. We have a question from Elena McAllister, who said, if you have time, could you talk a bit more about how storytelling has been a constant throughout your job/work? It's super interesting to see it as a mindset or approach.
Yeah.
I
think with some of these case studies that will come out, and we can talk more about that, but I'm a journalist I think that should have been I should have probably stayed that course maybe. I don't know. I love to ask questions. I love to get at the root of things. I just can't learn enough about situations or people. And then I want to tell a story. And so the beauty for me is that I was able to do that, across the board. I feel like I'm doing so much more of it these days because we have to produce so much content. This churn and desire for all this content and all these channels where we push out content is also very different than what I would have been doing 15 years ago when we were working on broadcast ads for Bud Light. Mm-hmm. You worked, you had a campaign, you were telling short stories, it was all for broadcast, and it didn't then roll out on other touch points. So you weren't thinking about, okay, and then how will we tell this online, or how will we tell this in social, or how will we, you had sort of that earned media attitude. You definitely wanted coverage of these things. But it's just getting more and more like complicated in terms of the different channels you could tell stories in, which makes the stories more layered and deep and nuanced. So I think that's exciting. Okay, naturalizer. Let's do this first. This is another one of my favorite charts, and I'm not going to go over this in great detail because I could spend an hour on it. But when I attack sort of work on any brand, I love to bring this to life. At the center of it, you need your brand core. Like, how do you distill this brand into a single-minded takeaway? Like, we need to simplify. Sometimes complication is so much easier than being simple and concise. And then you move out from there. And so from there, if you go upwards, we talk about heads and hearts. And so this is like, what's our vision? What are our values? What do we believe? Proof in pudding, I always think that's like the sort of the reasons to believe. Okay, great, you've inspired me, you've made me think, you've captured my attention, but like, what's the proof? Like, what really are you doing? You care about women's causes? That sounds great. Show me. Then walking and talking. And again, this is a lot of where the creative and marketing partner. It's how do we look? You know, what's that beautiful imagery and how are we consistent? It's how do we talk? You know, how do we talk to our consumer in a way that resonates with her? And then how do we behave? And, you know, here it's like, what do we support? Who else do we sponsor? Like, putting our money where our mouth is, basically. And so I'm not going to go through this for Naturalizer, but at the essence, because this will help for the rest of the presentation, the core for Naturalizer is a passion to bring women a better shoe today and every day since 1927. And if you remember, one of those insights, like women and men's feet aren't the same. And so this brand was like, women deserve better. They deserve not just a shrunken down man's shoe. We're going to do this. And so that really guides us in all that we do. You know, our tagline, the shoe with the beautiful foot. You know, we talk about how we look. You know, we want to be smart, uncomplicated style. This brand is definitely sophisticated, but it's approachable and it's more straightforward. It's not fussy. It's not complicated or tricky fashion. How we talk, you know, we give it to her straight. We want to be real and relatable. We want a genuine conversation with our consumers. You know, we say it's sort of this mixture of grit and grace. And at the end of the day, optimism, you know, is at our emotional core. So we're not angry, you know, we're not being militant at all, but we, you know, we certainly want to help move women and women's causes forward. How we behave, we've been for women since day one. And we've really brought that to life. And I'm going to show some real world examples, but you know, it's really rooted in empowerment, activism, inspiration. Inclusivity is a huge brand pillar for our Naturalizer brand. And our campaign right now is called Today We Will. And so it really all comes together under that umbrella. I talked a lot about you better know your consumer or you're going to fall flat on your face, because you could have the most beautiful images and you could have great product and you could have wonderful messaging, but if it doesn't resonate with her, then it's not going to work out, and that campaign is not going to have a long shelf life. So we fondly call our Naturalizer consumer the confident explorer. And I guess it should be really clear. This is like our bullseye. We cast a very wide tent at Naturalizer. We are multi-generational for sure, and we have some really fashion forward items, and then we have some really understandable, relatable, you know, kind of boring items, and we know that. But when we're trying to distill what is most important to us, we focus on this target, and we focus on it because we loved her. We already had a huge, we already over-indexed against this target, and she has huge shoe buying potential. So she's spending, you know, an outsized spend on shoes. So it makes sense. Anyway, younger skewing, millennial and Gen X segments are our fastest growing segments, but we certainly have, you know, plenty of boomers in the mix, I'm sure, as well. And, you know, we constantly are trying to also bring in that next generation, so that Gen N. Ethnically diverse, a real proof point for us, and a proud fact for us, is that we over-index against African American, Asians, and Hispanic consumers compared to the total pop. So we obviously lean heavy into that as well. Highly educated, over-indexed for grad school compared to total pop. And this idea of self-directed, like she chooses what makes sense to her from a fashion perspective. She definitely does that mix of high and low. She might have a $500 bag, but she's wearing $15 jeans from Old Navy. Like, she's got a style, it works for her, and you know, she feels good about that. So our organizing idea for Naturalizer is this Today We Will. And that's really our evergreen platform. It's our heart, it's the defining character. And then we are able to execute it under different stories and for different channels. So it really is campaignable, and it works across the board for all of the different consumer touch points that are important to, you know, this brand. So I'm just going to click through some of this, but the real goal here was to feature women who were doing amazing things. Some of them are activists, some of them are entrepreneurs, some of them, have big, they're more like on the philanthropist side of things. But the idea here is that at Naturalizer, we give them a platform to make their voices even more heard, and we lift that up and we inspire that. We have body positivity women, so we have sustainability advocates. So this campaign started 3 years ago, and we have just been so wowed and amazed by the women that have come into the fold. And the first season, it was harder because you had no sort of proof. Once we did this once, and then we could show these to other women, now women are calling us and asking to be featured in this campaign. So it's been, it's come a long way since it's launched, and something we're proud of. So that'll give you sort of a quick look at some of the women I talked about. Like I said, we've got the founders of CurvyCon, which took the idea of New York Fashion Week and sort of pushed it on its head and invented one for sort of women of real sizes. So that body positivity message. We have Lynn Slater, who's the accidental fashion icon, which happened to her at the age of 60. So where most of the fashion industry might have written her off, like she's come back in a huge way. We've got the Science Girl. We love her. She's got a PBS partnership as well, really big on YouTube. And this idea of making sure women are coming into STEM in bigger and larger amounts. So just really across the board, a lot of really interesting, phenomenal women. And so they really pay off the brand promise, like this idea of today we will, and then each of them bring their own narrative to that. So this is one of the co-founders of CurvyCon. She says, we will live unapologetically. We will not allow size to dictate our life or our style. And at Naturalizer, one of the few brands that has just such a range of size and fit, that this is a really important message for us. And we, already have a huge consumer segment. So we've got, from 5 to 12s, we have narrow calf, wide calf. So really, again, being able to service all these kinds of consumers. So this just gives you a look at some of the look and the aesthetic of the campaign and how we've brought it to life across our own channels and also paid media. Flip through these kind of quick. Now I'm going to talk more about Rebecca. We partnered with her in a big way in 2019 around voting. And so I want to show you how that played out. She's an activist. She founded the Outrage in DC. It happened after the last election where she really felt like women's voices were not being heard, and we certainly weren't being represented at the levels we should be, across the board, politically, at local, national levels. So, and while it started there, then she has really shown a light on all kinds of injustices from, Black Lives Matter. She's working on some things about Stop Asian Hate. So she's always sort of at that forefront of, where she believes, there's been an injustice and we need to come together to fix it. She's a great organizer. She's also a mother and a businesswoman, obviously. Okay. So this is something I'm super proud of. We worked on this with her. So this is a boot. This is one of those magical moments that came together. It had great buzz. It had great PR potential. It made the employees here feel really proud and rally around something, which is important. It also had great commercial success. So when all those things come together, you sort of checked all the boxes. So this is a boot that Naturalizer had. It's the Cali boot. It's one of our best-selling boots. It's awesome, really comfortable. It's a great boot to march in. We partnered with Rebecca and said, what if you helped us create some, artwork that brings forward this idea that women need to vote. We're not telling you for whom you should vote. We're just saying our voices need to be heard and you need to come out in larger numbers. And then all the proceeds from the sale of this limited, so we did that sort of scarcity buzz, helped a lot on this, right? This idea of this limited, get it now. All the proceeds will go to benefit She Should Run, which is a great non-for-profit organization in Atlanta that is all about inspiring women to run for office. And so Rebecca loved it. We were off to the races. We had all kinds of really great things planned. And then, a pandemic hit. So we had to rethink everything we thought we were going to do and come up with another plan. But really for us, this was all about activating brand power. And it really gave Naturalizer like we talk about having share of voice in the media spend and share of wallet in terms of like, what's this consumer spending and what are they spending with us? And here we had share of culture. Like we actually were present in a big cultural moment and relevant. And as we work to, always attract a younger consumer, this type of thing is really important. So at the end of the day, what were we trying to do, with this activation? We wanted to reach a younger consumer. We wanted to underscore our brand's promise of supporting women's causes. And we wanted to keep the brand relevant. We wanted to be part of a conversation. You don't want to be, forgotten. So we wanted to drive media. We wanted to drive influencer interest, consumer awareness. Obviously, we always want to drive sales. We really wanted to drive sales of the Cali boot because it was going to benefit a great cause. And the good news is the Cali boot exists beyond just the boat. We have it just a plain black leather. We had all kinds of fun mixed materials and prints. And we saw a huge lift in the sales of this shoe in general. So we sold out of the boat boot. That's, I'm stealing my own thunder, almost immediately. But then we also just saw the sale of the Cali boot skyrocket. So, that was really great. Did it work? So instead of having a really fun live event in DC and inviting media and influencers to it and making it, really like an activation moment, we couldn't do that because of the pandemic. So we had a big virtual event instead, and we featured women from She Should Run. We featured Rebecca. We featured Stacy, somebody who was out of Stacey Abrams' camp in Atlanta. So we had a group of really dynamic women, and it was great. And, who knows how to measure a virtual event? This is pretty new to us, but 90% of the RSVP, those who RSVP'd attended, 77% actively participated, 85 stayed on for the whole time. And while we scheduled an hour, these women were enjoying the conversation so much and getting such great questions from the crew. I think this ended up being almost like a 2-hour event. It was a bit of a marathon. And out of it, then we generated 53 million social impressions, which really, this kicked it off. This launched the boot. It launched the idea. They didn't talk about the boot. Like that wasn't the purpose. It was all about, empowered women, empowering women, and how all of them have done this in their career. Sort of the side note at the end was the boot and the fact that the purchases would benefit She Should Run.
Hey, Holly.
Also,
can you go back one? There's a question that bottom right image speaks to about how you interact with illustrators within the line of work.
Oh, yes. Good
So
point.
can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So the other sort of magic of this collaboration coming together is we did not want to have these shoes mass produced with a stamp, out of a factory in China. We really wanted to bring sort of that artisanal craftsmanship story to life too. So we partnered with this artist who had worked with on a couple of live events where she had painted on shoes for us. So she literally turned her house over. She sent us the best pictures. There's just it was 1,000 boxes of shoes. So it took over her whole house, and she hand painted Vote on every single one of those 1,000 pairs. So is there something else you wanted to underscore there, Daniel?
The question was, is there a place for illustration and branding? So I think the answer is yes.
Yes. And you know what I think is hard? I think there's tons of place. It's a need that always pops up. And Daniel, you could talk about that while you were here. And that's where networking is so important, because often maybe that skill set isn't something that is within as part of the corporate team, although I would love it. And I think it would only add to it. But it's just that idea of networking and having your name out there, because these things pop up all the time and you want to say who can go help us with this? And by sheer chance, I had connected with Kirsten on Instagram about something. And then I invited her to an event in Chicago because she's from Chicago. And now it's turned into a much more sort of long-term ongoing relationship with the brand. So definitely. We had great pickup across earned media, which again, there's that third party credibility, which really underscores. So this all came together and, in such a great way. So I'm just going to click through this quickly. Just impactful coverage. We could have never paid for this kind of coverage, right? Like we could have never had ads in Shape, USA Today, ABC News, Life and Style. We could have never done that. But the fact that, we had a great pitch and a really great, authentic story, people loved it and couldn't get enough of it. I don't know if we have time for this video. I'm going to skip through it, but Extra just did a really fun piece on the Vote Boots that brought it to life. So across, all, oh, nope, I'm not going to skip it. I'm going to play it.
And when you get out there to rock the vote, you want to look your best, of course. Well, there's a lot more to voting chic than just red, white, and blue. From Kerry Washington's serious swag to Selena Gomez's dance for action on TikTok, the stars are making rock the vote statements with their fashion statements.
You can promote the vote this year by wearing tees, jackets, masks. If you were looking for a get off the vote look, this has to be it.
It's a crisp cream blazer with voter patches, distressed denim paired with a settled button down and comfy flats.
I'm obsessed with Birdie's shoes. They launched their vote collection to really inspire women to get out and vote. All of this is from American Eagle. We have a denim jacket paired with this really cute customizable tee. American Eagle's sister brand Aerie also has some really cute options, and Toki by Gravitas has some really cute vote masks.
These socks will do a lot.
From Mother Denim, $5 from every pair sold will be donated to I Am a Voter. Celebs are a huge fan of these naturalizer boots. A portion of these proceeds from these special boots go to She Should Run. It's a nonpartisan organization that helps get women running for office.
Okay, so just like, all of it coming together in a really impactful way. And, the other thing is without a big marketing budget to like do a lot of paid media, we really sort of had to like get creative with obviously PR pitching, but then also gifting. But when you have a really great story like this, you don't have to work so hard. And so we had just a lot of great sort of VIP celebrity interest along the way as well. And so at the end of the day, I think the big news is, we had great attendance in the event. The media impressions we delivered across premier media, publications, broadcast digital, the celebrity impressions, the social media impressions, really, just amplified this story in a way that I don't know that any of us imagined. We sold out of the Vote Boots almost immediately, but the great news was then consumers just started buying the Cali boot as well. So it was a really fun initiative and was like a real bright spot in a otherwise not as amazing of a year. Okay, so now I want to just switch to Franco Sardo and really talk more about sort of design and art and craftsmanship. And Daniel, I'd love for you to weigh in throughout here too. But there was a real need, there was an insight here that we had this brand that we would debate whether it was a brand or a label. We definitely made shoes that consumers loved via Franco, but I wasn't sure, none of us really knew, did they understand the brand? When they closed their eye and they thought of Franco Sardo, there was kind of a void. It was just like the shoe that they bought at Dillard's. So there was a real opportunity for us to, think about this brand in a different way and to stand for something. And so where we sort of ended up and is really leaning into our Italian heritage and this idea of the art of everything. We wanted to invite visual attention. We wanted to sort of act like an independent and indie, like a new brand, like we didn't have like all this like, corporate sort of noise around us. And, we needed to create a product nucleus as well. And we just wanted to stand, to stand for sort of timeless, art as part of like the everyday. So this, this is really a beautiful campaign. This idea of the art of everything. We've shot the shoes like their artwork, and we've really like heroed the shoe imagery and the shoe itself. It's a piece of art. We talk a lot about the Italian designer and its craftsmanship, from his own hands. So we show a lot of shoemaking that concentrates, on his hands making this. So this idea that Franco Sardo embodies timeless wearable style inspired by the craft and design of Italian footwear, rooted in classics with modern detail and superb fit. Franco Sardo prevails in giving women on the go a modern array of footwear that radiates style and confidence. And the interesting thing about this work, we did this all during the pandemic. So we had a lot of big plans for how we were going to shoot this to almost feel museum-esque and where we were going to shoot. And that all changed and we had to do this sort of socially distanced. So not only could we not travel, but we had to have really tiny crews. So usually on a photo shoot, you're going to have, the number of people is always sort of mind boggling. Everyone has a really specific job. And now you have to do that, with like 2 or 3 people. And so anyway, it was really a different kind of shoot. But we thought that it really brought to life this story of a different kind of classic. And so just beautiful work here. The model's beautiful. The wardrobing is great. Art direction and design were so important here, because really the visuals and the way we're treating the product and the typography and all of those things are like really the heroes here, across the board. And you could check out the Franco Sardo website too, because this is all fall, and now we have the spring assets, which have been done in a really similar way, and we're bringing even more of that that art story to life.
10 till.
Okay, so I think that's good, and we can just move to questions. I wanted to hit on both of those 2 brands, but what do you guys want to talk about?
Well, at the follow-ups, the key points. I think you can go through those and then questions.
Okay.
You could jump in.
All right, let's do that.
But
Okay,
these
so
takeaways, yeah.
here are the takeaways, and I can share. I know this is recorded, and Emily, if you need any of these slides, I'm happy to share. But I think the big takeaways is how quickly the marketing landscape changes, but how the principles of marketing remain the same. So the way we reach consumers is constantly evolving. Like when I first started, there were 3 TV stations to buy media on, and then you were done. NBC, CBS, ABC, like check. So that's evolved so much. So we're always evolving how we're going to reach the consumer, but our approach to how we think about a brand, how we build a brand, how we invest in brand power, that really hasn't changed. And so I think that's really important. So always consumer first, and then where she is in the life cycle is important. Then this idea of omni-channel all the times for brands and agencies, it's vital that we look holistically across marketing efforts. I think that's where we see a lot of things fail. You have a really great idea and it's executed beautifully, maybe in store, and then it falls apart everywhere else, or conversely, you've done it really well on your own website, but that's not being pulled through socially. And you have to nuance these things because the different channels, obviously, you want to privilege maybe something a little bit different, but it's that idea of how do you align and create messaging and channels through that entire consumer journey so that they know your brand, they understand your brand. Consumers will not work hard to understand us. So we need to remember that. We can't get overly complicated. Content is still king. So, whether it's powerful imagery, whether it's the best headline we've ever read, if you don't have strong content, we are not going to get their attention. We want to make bold statements with unique campaigns to differentiate ourselves from our competitors. I love to say this to my teams because I say we're a fertile group. There are so many great ideas. We can go all over the place. We can ideate for hours upon hours, but vision without execution is hallucination. So at some point the ideation, needs to be toned down, and we need to start thinking about like, what can we execute? What can we do? How can we move the needle? How can I sell shoes? That's key. So we need to remember that. All right. So there you go. I know that was a lot, guys. Thanks for powering through with me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Holly. I definitely, I may want to borrow some of those specific chart infographics just to share with everybody sort of asynchronously, because I think that really concisely kind of wraps up a lot of the stuff that you talked about. So I will reach out to you for those. So we did get a couple of questions, and we got one specifically that I think you kind of touched on with the vote boot and sort of the idea of activism in tandem or working within marketing and brand solutions. But this is sort of the opposite of that in the question, which is working in marketing. Do you ever have to push for a product or idea you don't personally believe in? If so, how do you reconcile any negative feelings around that?
Oh, good question. I don't know that I've ever had to work on something I just at the core don't believe in. I definitely have my favorites and my not as big of favorites. But two things. One, if you can spin a great story and you're a good marketer, you can probably bring the room along with you to go down a path that you feel better and stronger about. and, you know, I guess sometimes like the almighty dollar is going to win out. And so that's when sometimes you maybe say like, I can't believe that we have to, I can't believe that I have to go and present to Walmart one more time. Like, can we just get out of that retailer? You know, but like I can, you know, I can understand from a business perspective, maybe why that, you know, we have to be in there. The distribution is big and it's this specific shoe. So, you know, I don't know that but I think it would be hard if you had to work on something that just you were like totally against. I'm lucky I haven't. And, you know, at Caleres, it's such a creative group, and it's so diverse that I feel like, you know, most of the things that we're going to stand up for and want to do are going to be important to me personally.
Yeah.
I think, Holly, that also speaks to being deliberate about where you've worked. Like, you're not working at 4 companies or you know, products you don't believe in. So
Well,
then
that's very true. Yeah.
if you're working on a cigarette brand, or you were working on a tobacco brand, or something that just fundamentally didn't align.
Yeah, you're totally right. And I think the where that could come into play, I guess, is at an agency where you have all kinds of clients, you know, but then hopefully you would have good enough leadership that you could say like, hey, I'm way better suited for this one than that one.
Well, but then it's the Don Draper thing. It's if you don't like what they're saying, change the conversation.
There you
If they're
go.
good enough at marketing, you can take them along with you.
So true.
So that's excellent. So there was actually sort of a follow-up comment from Tyler Stallings. Hi, Holly, long time. You worked with my husband, Dave Wolf at AB.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm unable to turn my camera on at the moment. Adding to the question above, can you share a few specific examples of design for good, which I think the vote boot definitely qualifies as, and sustainable and responsible practices? Students today are very interested in working in a responsible way, balancing consumerism with activism. And I think a lot of that sort of aligns itself with sustainability in the fashion industry, which I'm sure you come up.
Yeah.
You know.
So yeah, agreed. We have this conversation constantly. We had, you know, we were having it in important way, in meaningful ways, but then I don't know, there was a tipping point probably 5 years ago where we had an influx of new talent on our product teams to develop shoes, who really brought all kinds of new energy and almost demands. Like, we are like, this is just silly. Like, we can make this choice or this choice, and it makes this kind of difference. And they all had joined our Dr. Scholl's team. And that was the first team I worked on here too. So like a little group of us quietly got together and just started doing things before we got noticed. Because we knew as soon as it got noticed, it would get corporatized and then it would get slowed down. So Scholl's is the furthest along, and they've got, you know, great goals. Like by 2022, they want all of their shoes to have like 100% of the recyclable materials that we're able to have in shoes. There are some parts and pieces that can't be, but like this is like algae foam in the insoles, bamboo, recycled plastic bottles, which I know everyone's seen a lot of shoe companies are doing that, but I think the bamboo and the algae are interesting and unique to us right now. Working with like sourcing all of our leathers through the Leather Working Group, which is a national or a globally known company that really makes sure that the leathers that you're getting are made in the most sustainable, non-wasteful way. So partnering with big organizations that know more than us. And that's why it's good that it's being corporatized, because then now we have scale and we can do this across the board. And the other big thing we did almost immediately on Scholl's, and now we've done across all of them, is this single ship box. So before you would get, if you ordered a box online, you would get a box in a box, basically. So there was just so much packaging waste. And so like we've reduced all of that. And like near and dear to my heart for Dr. Scholl's, for every original shoe that you purchase, we partner with a company and a tree is planted. So, and we've got great stats and figures on that, like how much, you know, how much plastic we've saved, how many trees we've built, how much CO2 we've saved from being re-released. And so the good news is now there's a corporate wide sort of report card. Everyone is growing in the same direction. The brands are at different parts of the lifestyle, and like we say here all the time, it's about progress, not perfection. Like certainly not going to be out there waving a flag saying we're doing all of this right, but we are making conscious decisions at every step in the process to be more eco-conscious and to make these shoes in a better way.
That's awesome. I want to open it up just in case anybody is logged on that wants to turn their video on and ask a question. Just remember, you know, Holly's open to any questions that you guys might have.
Yeah, or connect on LinkedIn and we can talk offline. But if you want to be entered in for a shoe, you better type a question fast.
I do have one other question from Alexis Kennedy. She wants to know what are some more of the changes that you're seeing in the industry that came along with the pandemic that you think might be permanent changes?
Well, I think online shopping behavior, just, like any barrier that was there, I think is gone. Consumers got so used to that and comfortable with it, and it worked for them. And then maybe those people who didn't want to do it realized there is like some efficiency and ease. And so that. I also think that, since we've all been locked in, I believe that in 22 and beyond, and a little bit of 21, we're actually going to see like a resurgence of old school marketing tactics, more like, event driven, experiential, because people are just, like I don't know about you, but like, how many more emails do you want to read, with a sale or whatnot? Like, I think we've over optimized, over digitized, and certainly oversaturated that digital space. So I think brands are going to have to start giving some experiences to make consumers care more and want to come out and like, interact with the brand. And I think there will be a big resurgence of some of those tactics and ideas. So that's exciting too.
I have one question before you wrap up. Can can you speak a little bit to all the creative, all the design, and how design and marketing kind of works together?
Yeah.
How big is the team, and kind of how do you navigate that?
Yeah. So I would say our team is about maybe 65 people. It's weird because it's been a tough year. What I love about the way Caleres works is that, and Daniel, you can speak to this, we all sit amongst each other, and it is definitely a team effort. So it is not like marketing briefs creative and then they go into a room and they quietly work for 3 weeks and then they come out with this big like ta-da. Like, that's not at all what happens. We all partner, we're all in it. Daniel used to sit right behind me. We would talk to each other all day long, like, look at this, what about this, this is what I'm thinking from an activation standpoint, so we need more things developed like this. So super collaborative. You have to have systems in place, like, so you have to put in a brief and it has to go through, because otherwise deadlines wouldn't be met and everybody would be pulling out their hair. So we certainly have systems and processes, but I also think we have really open dialogue and great exchange of ideas. And like I said, it's such a creative atmosphere that it's, the ideas are endless. We try to pair up a marketing person with a creative person across every single thing we're working on, so that there's that nice sort of, balance of like the art, the science, and how it's all coming together.
Love it.
Is that right, Daniel? You have anything you
Yeah.
want to add about how we did that?
You answered it beautifully.
Okay.
Excellent.
And we miss Daniel. He can come back anytime.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you, Holly. That was awesome. So I think that's where we'll end it. That seems like a great place to end. Is that?
All right.
it's
I
a team
appreciate
effort.
everyone's time. Thank you all.
Thank you for coming and speaking to us today, and thank you, Daniel, for suggesting that Holly come and speak with us today. And thank you for everybody that logged on and joined us. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording now.